portion of our annual meeting, and with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Lundberg.
Great, thank you, Renee. As we do every year, we go through a presentation of the budget. The board has had the opportunity to hear the preliminary budget, of which there's not a lot of changes. There's a lot of small changes, but nothing major that have affected the budget, as you will see in the documents that we present forthcoming here. I wanted to reiterate a couple things that I always talk about in the budget hearing, that the budget is a lot more than just a fiscal planning and accountability tool. It says a lot about the Board of Education, and it says a lot about, it's a communication document that shows where we've been, where we're going, and where we are now. It outlines the district's priorities, goals, and it's a pathway for how we're moving forward. It provides the tools to achieve your visions as a Board of Education, and just lays out all that stuff. And quite frankly, today I'm pleased to inform the stakeholders of the Brandon Valley School District that the 1920 budget places us on fiscal ground that's never been more stable. I'm very happy with where we're at today with the 1920 budget. As I go through, and you'll be approving later today stuff with bond issue related stuff for the upcoming thing, and it's just so pleasing to me to look at all that stuff and see that we're going to be building another new elementary school at the same time that Robert Bennis Elementary is coming off the tax rolls, so it'll be a wash there. And then as I look further out the line, as we as a school board have planned all the way along, look further, say 5 years or something, and we build another school or another whatever we build, it'll be about the same time that Fred Assam and the high school activities centers will be rolling off the bond issues in 2027. So that's the part that should please the stakeholders of Brandon Valley Schools, the planning, the succession of how we're putting these new schools online, and really no tax increases for the most part. I mean, it's legitimate passing of it. One gets paid off and another one comes on. As we kind of said last year, the 1920 budget is once again summarized with the word of staffing. Our staff is the key component of our 1920 budget. It's been a key component of your goals and wishes as a Board of Education. In the 1920 budget, we have a 5% across the board salary increase for everybody, and a dozen new teachers are encompassed in this 1920 budget. So if you had to pick one word of where the 1920 budget is, I think it would be staff. The actual document that we have that I put in your board packet, the first 2 pages, the first page 2 is the expenditures for each fund. The second page is the revenues for each fund. And on the bottom of page 3, a very important aspect of that is our fund balances and how we manage those and how we go forward and backwards with those fund balances. And I just feel that we've done a very, very good job of managing those. Not too much, not too little, just right where we should be in managing those fund balances. We've been very responsible with the taxpayer dollars. Not, I have a big problem with hoarding that money. The taxpayers don't, we as taxpayers don't pay our taxes for me to put it in the money in the bank. When we pay our taxes, we wanted to see those monies spent on what we paid those taxes for. So I'm a big proponent of that, in which we have. You still need fund balance to get through the tough times and the cash flowing of stuff, but it's been a very good management of those fund balances. As you can see on the bottom of the page, $5.57 million at the end of this year in the general fund, projected at $5.5 million at the end of next year. $2.3 million at the end of this year in capital outlay fund, $2.8 million at the end of next year. Special education, $520,000 at the end of this year, $715,000 at the end of next year. That's been one of our goals in the special education fund, to build that fund balance back up to a 15% level, I think, is our goal. We pretty much dwindled that. And the other funds you can see. So going forward, the charts that I have for you, the total revenues of $47.2 million. of which $29,314,000 is in the general fund, $5.7 million is the capital outlay fund, $6.5 million is the special education fund, just under $3 million in the bond redemption fund, and $2.6 million in the food service fund. And this chart kind of shows you where all of that money comes from as a total. 50% of it comes from local sources, local property taxes, and generally locally generated revenues, gate receipts, interest, that type of thing. 43% of it is from state sources, and just under 5% from federal sources. The expenditure budget line item for all funds is just under $46 million, $29,587,000 in the general fund, $4,360,000 in the capital outlay fund, $6.3 million, $6,368,000 in the pension or special education fund, $55,000 in the pension fund, $2,955,000 in the bond redemption fund, and $2.6 million in the food service fund. You can see the breakdowns of how the various funds relate to the total expenditure of the district. Just about 65% of the total expenditures are in the general fund, and then breakdown 14% in the spec ed fund, and then 10% in the capital outlay fund, 6.5% in the bond redemption fund, and 5% in the food service fund. The next chart just shows the breakdown of salaries, where those salaries actually go. 75% of the salaries are in the classroom, which is a big key to the Board of Education. I think that 75% of all the money that goes out in salaries and benefits is directly in the classroom. The general fund, speaking specifically for that, $29,314,000 of revenues. That's comprised 61% of that money comes from state sources, 31% from local taxes. We're growing at such a level, the number of kids that the state, it's growing at a pace that far exceeds the property taxes coming in, so the state picks up a lot of that tab of our expenditures. The general fund expenditures, where they're going: instructional services 61.5%, co-curricular just under 3%, and early retirement about 1.1%. So the total of those equals 65.3% of our total budget, and the rest of it, 35%, is support services. I always like to try to remind you that support services, it automatically has this connotation of administration. It's not just administration. There are a lot of categories that I consider instructional and support services: guidance counselors, libraries, curriculum. Those types of things are in support services, so it's not just administration. General fund expenditures by object level: 86% of its salary and benefits. Utilities of $1.3 million are 4%. Supplies are just under 5%, and other purchase services are about 4%. Vast majority of our money goes to salaries and benefits, as you can see. That's what drives our whole business, people. Capital outlay fund for 1920 shows a total of $5,260,000 of expenses. Just highlighted some of the main areas: facility improvements, $775,000. We have a line item in there for land acquisition, which is a change from the preliminary budget, that we did not have that item in there. We have since had the ability to purchase some land that you'll hopefully approve later on in the budget. Maintenance equipment, transportation, $335,000. Instructional, $1.4 million. That $1.4 million, about $1.2 million of it is technology. Debt service, $550,000. We transfer out of the capital outlay fund $900,000. There's a lot of $900,000 numbers in that. It gets confusing, I know, for me, and I'm looking at it every day. I was like, which $900,000 is that? Is that land, or is that the operating transfer out? But we have both of them in this budget for a total of $5,260,000. We take in $5,760,000 in revenue, which is all local taxes in the capital outlay fund. There's no state assistance in the capital outlay fund. It's all local revenue. Spec ed fund has a total expenditures of $6,368,000. 4.8 of that is instructional, $485,000 of out-of-district placements, $600,000 of cooperative services or relationship with Teachwell. Transportation is a big part of our special education budget, over $300,000. You can see the revenue, 36% is from state sources, 52% from local, and 12% from federal. The next chart that I have in for us to review for the presentation is the district valuations. You can see in the last few years we're back into those modes where we're growing 9-10% a year. 2 years ago it was 10%. This past year, or this year, it's up 9%. We're projecting. Those numbers are not final, but we're experiencing some really good growth in our total valuations. The mill levies for next year, you can see the total mill levies down at the bottom of that, 7.48 last year and 7.32 projected next year for the ag levy, 933 for owner occupied this year and 915 for next year. Basically those levies are about a 2% decrease in the actual levy, but depending on your individual situation with your house or your farm or whatever, the valuations of your property have a lot to do with what happens to your taxes. But this just shows that the actual levy is down about 2% for each one of those categories, roughly. The next chart shows the kind of a summary of where we're at. I pulled this one out a little earlier. Usually I wait a little bit to show you this, but I wanted to put this in the budget presentation. It really shows the management of our fund balances is a big thing here. As you can see in the general fund, we had just over $27 million of budgeted revenue and $343,000 of budgeted expenses for a planned deficit of $245,000. We took in $27,622,000, which is 102% of our actual budget. Reason being there, majority of that reason is we grew 80 kids more than we projected. That's about $450,000. And our expenditures are estimated to come in at 99.5%. This is one area that I'd like to reiterate that we do a very good job pushing those to the max. I mean, a lot of school districts, if you were to be board members at a different school district, go somewhere else, those expenditures come in at 94-95%. That's once again goes back to I don't think the taxpayer is paying me to come in at 94%. We want to hit those expenditure numbers as close to 100% as we possibly can and not leaving a lot of money on the table. Because if we're not spending that money, the taxpayer, our patrons, expected us to be pumping that into something, is my read on that. So at the beginning of this year, we had $5,268,000, $5.3 million of fund balance. We're estimating at the end of the year, 5.7. We grew $400,000, $415,000 versus a $245,000 deficit that we had planned. And once again, the vast majority of that is we planned on 115 new kids and we got 190. Next year we're planning on 175 and we'll see what happens. Capital outlay fund, a lot of the same type of stuff there. $1.6 million fund balance at the beginning of the year, $2.3 million at the end of the year. In expenditures in the capital outlay fund, a lot of that is timing differences. We'll have the track renovation in 1 year. I mean, the complete budget for it is in 1 year, say at $1.5 million. Well, maybe $700,000 of it came out of the year prior to that. So I just roll the complete expenditure budget into the following year, but $700,000 of it might have been paid out in the previous year. So that's a real timing difference fund that projects come in early, late, however it works. Spec Ed fund, at the end of the year, we're projecting about $520,000 of fund balance. Definitely going in the right direction. Got a ways to go yet. But we pretty much had it down to not much at all and have been slowly building it up. $184,000 at the beginning of the year, $520,000 at the end of the year. Pension fund will be eliminated at the end of the 1920 school year. We'll have about $53,000 left in that fund at the end of this year, 6/30/19. and we'll transfer that money into the general fund and close out that fund at this year. Bond redemption fund, kind of an in and out, has about $800,000 in fund balance. The last slide then kind of summarizes the budget for next year, expenditures, revenues. In the general fund, I'll hit on that, take off on the highlights. In the general fund, we saw an increase. The fund balance increased to 5.7 million, which we talked about. Majority of that from student count over from the projection of 450,000, and then some other revenues that were up about 75,000. 99.5% of our budget, we're still under 137,000 in total. When you're dealing with a big number of 27 million, 0.5% of 27 million is still a big number. So that's that $400,000 of increased fund balance that we were able to ascertain at 6/30/19. Over the last 15 years, I calculated that our expenditures have averaged over the last 15 years 99.2% of budget. And we do not, very rarely do we do any budget supplements or adjustments or anything like that. So it's what you budgeted and approve in July, look at in May and approve in July is what we live with until the following June 30th. We had an 8.2% increase in revenue from the previous year. 1920 has an 8% increase in revenue. State aid increase of 2.5% amounted to 585,000. The student increase from the previous year, 450,000. Those kids that we grew, that we didn't plan on, so they just kick into the new year. And then we're also planning on 175 kids new for next year for just under $1 million. So that 2.2 million is comprised of those numbers. And the expenditure side of that, also up 8%, the 2.2 million. How we spent it, 975,000 for salaries and benefits. These are generalities. $875,000 in additional staff, retirement savings of 80,000. We had a decrease in our grants, Title I grant of 25,000. We had a substitute salary, teacher salary increase of 50,000. We moved all the pension fund expenses into the general fund for 315,000, and other stuff of 135,000. That's what entails our $2.2 million of increased expenditures. I also like to put in there are concerns that we would have, that I would have from a fiscal standpoint. It's been pretty much the same for the last 10 years. Is our enrollments, are they going to continue to grow? I think the answer to that has been pretty obvious, yes. But one key factor in that we got to remember as a board, which we pointed out here, probably ad nauseum, that this was our last year of a small senior class. I say small senior class. We're going to start seeing senior classes of 300 plus, whereas in the last few years it's been 230, 240. So we're not going to have that built-in 110 kids with a kindergarten coming in at 335 and a senior going out at 230. You build in a 100 kid increase just like that. That's going to slowly start to phase out. And you've seen that in all of our budget projections. So they're going from 150 to 170. They're dropping down to like 100 kid increases, which is still good growth. State aid increases continue to be uncertain. It's supposed to be statute, but sometimes we don't always follow the statutes of what we get for state aid increases. It depends on what kind of revenue situation the state of South Dakota is in. And then also we have to strive to remember that these additional buildings that we bring on are not free. They are very expensive to operate, and this is where a lot of downfalls in school districts, where you fail to remember the operational costs of those buildings: heats, lights, custodians, administration, blah, blah, blah. I always figure about $4.50 a square foot. So on a normal, say a 80,000 square foot building, about $300,000 is going to add to your general fund just to open up the doors of a new building. And we do have plans in place to try to temper that additional cost and roll it in over a 2-year, I always like to roll that cost in over a 2-year period so you just don't get hit bam at the 1 year with 300,000, try to taper it in at 150,000 a year. Capital outlay fund, our valuations, as we talked about, will grow 185 million or 9.4% is what we're projecting for next year. We talked about what we're looking at purchasing in the capital outlay fund. Nothing new there. We're showing a $500,000 surplus in the capital outlay fund, starting to try to build some money up. That actually our plan would be to use some capital outlay funds to put an addition on the high school in the time frame that we needed to hit. A couple years down the road, we'd just use cash to do that. Special ed fund, talked a lot about these things. The budget concerns and challenges there is the fund balance of 525,000, going in the right direction, still not where we want it. We want it to be about 15% of the 6 million, which 900,000, $1 million is where, if we were in a perfect world, we want that fund balance to be, but we're getting, going in the right direction at least. We have another $200,000 surplus budgeted this year, so hopefully we can continue that roll. But it's a fund that you never know. Things can change so rapidly in that fund. That's the end of any slides I have. I'll entertain any questions that you guys would have, or anybody would have. Like I said, I just am very pleased to be able to present this to you, because I don't think we've been on more stable ground as far as our long-range projections and the current 19-20 budget. Just everything in totality is just very good shape. Go ahead with any questions.
The operating transfer to the general fund, you're allowed to make one. So how does that work?
We transfer $900,000 out of the capital outlay fund. We're allowed to transfer just under half of the total capital outlay fund. We could transfer that much, but obviously you don't want to transfer that. But we started that when the governor cut funding 10% that 1 year, 10 or 8%, where we started. We transferred about $675,000 that year to try to maintain, and then we built that up a little bit and increased it a little bit. So we're transferring $900,000 from the capital outlay fund, and the $55,000 is the residual from the pension fund that we're transferring into the general fund this year, just to close out that fund. So those are the operating transfers. All pension fund will be absorbed by the general fund from this point forward. Other questions?
Do any of you guys out in the public have any comments, questions?
Got 5 minutes to kill. I talk too fast. Or maybe I talk too slow, some would say.
I guess I would just want to note, our business office has the budgetary talent and professional skill set to develop a highly accurate budget that promotes our efforts to create a finance plan that supports our core operating principle and also the attainment of our district goals as outlined in our strategic plan, as Mr. Lundberg referred to on multiple points: fiscal responsibility, the saving of those capital outlay dollars so that we're not putting undue tax burden on the taxpayer, so that we can do the high school addition, timing our buildings so that one comes off the rolls when one goes on, just outstanding planning. With that, I would like to thank Paul and Jim and Mary for their time and effort throughout the budgeting process. I know it's an extensive project and they spend a lot of time, so thank you so much for your efforts and your team's efforts on that.
It takes everybody to accomplish what we do, and I know I bark at Ty a lot for watching expenditures and stuff, but you don't, 5%, as I tell him, these 5% raises just don't occur magically. It's a culmination of a lot of things, whether it be just a little thing that I'm barking at him to turn the doggone air conditioning off when there's nobody in the building. Or he's the only one around in the summer, so he gets the brunt of it. At least during the school year, I got principals around that I can bark at them for something too. But it just takes a lot of stuff and a lot of effort on part of the entire administration to accomplish all the things that we do.
Well, thank you from the board perspective, because without your expertise, we wouldn't be able to make proper fiscal decisions. So thank you for
Thank you.
keeping it not necessarily easy for us, but making it look easy for us to do a great job. And so thank you for doing a great job.
Thank you to you guys for staying the course that we try to plot out. That's critical. That cohesiveness of the Board of Education and Administration to plot that course that we plan out. That's just huge to the success of a school district.
All right, with that, we'll just recess for a few minutes until it's time to start our annual organizational board meeting. Would invite you to stand, please, to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Mr. Lundberg?
Cullum.
Yes.
Odie. Klumper. Saxer is absent. Talcott.
All right, so welcome everyone to our annual meeting. And with that, swearing in an oath of office, Mr. Lundberg.
Yep. I'll go to the other side of the podium and swear you guys in. I won't make you read it, I'll read it for you. If you guys could just stand though and go through the oath of office for both of you. Just raise your right hand. Do you, Renee Ullum and Greg Talcott, having been elected to the office of school board member in the Brandon Valley School District in Brandon, South Dakota, solemnly swear that you will support the laws and Constitution of the United States and the state of South Dakota, and to faithfully perform the duties of school board membership, and by filing a bond if required?
Yep.
Congratulations, 3 years, guys.
Thank you.
Congrats. Renee Ullum. Great job.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, we will reorganize. I would entertain any nomination for board president. Is there a nomination for board president?
I'll nominate Renee Ullum.
I have a nomination for Renee Ullum. Are there any other nominations for board president? Any other nominations? Hearing none, I would recommend that you make a motion that nominations cease and we cast a unanimous ballot for Renee Ullum to serve as board president. Do I have a motion?
Motion to do all that.
I have a motion by Mr. Klumper. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Odie.
And all that.
Roll call vote, Mr. Lundberg.
Klumper. Yes. Odie.
Yep.
Talcott.
Yes.
Ullum.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
The podium is yours.
That just always feels a little bit weird. I'm just going to put that disclaimer out there. All right, so now we need to nominate for vice president. I would entertain any nominations that there are.
I'll nominate Greg Odie for vice president.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, what's that verbiage I use?
You'd like to entertain a motion that nominations cease and you cast a unanimous ballot for Greg Odie to serve as vice president?
Yes, I would like that, please. A motion.
I would second that.
That's the first.
You're the first.
I'm the first.
So you just make the motion to do that. Okay. Make sure you're on.
Except for this thing doesn't work.
Okay, did you turn on the side?
I did. Yeah, but
Okay, we'll flip them. Okay, sorry about that. Mr. Talcott made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Another roll call vote.
Who made the second?
Klumper.
Klumper, okay, we got roll call on this Telcott.
yes.
Klumper.
Yes.
Odie. Cullum.
Yes.
I think the director can be silent. Either one.
Weird.
Get the car, I think that's out.
That's out, yeah. Batteries.
All right, well, congratulations, Mr. Odie. I think he'll be fine with that. Conflict of interest disclosure or waiver requests? Oh, sorry, I had that circled too. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented, if there are no changes.
So move.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All of those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, now, conflict of interest disclosure and waiver requests.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have two waiver requests that we need to entertain. Waiver request number one is from member Dan Klumper. The contract that is being disclosed is the contract of his spouse who serves as a teacher in the Brandon Valley School District. It would be our recommendation, or my recommendation, to approve and authorize the request for waiver because the terms of the contract are fair and reasonable and not contrary to the public interest, such that a waiver should be granted. And that obviously needs to be a roll call with Mr. Klumper abstaining.
You can entertain a motion, right?
Need motion.
I would entertain a motion, like Superintendent Larson just discussed, about the approval of a waiver request from Mr. Klumper.
So move.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. Our roll call vote, Mr. Lundberg, sorry.
Odie. Telcott.
Yes.
Klumper would abstain. Cullum.
Yes,
Carries.
thank you.
Very good. Our second waiver request this evening is with Dr. Telcott. Dr. Telcott, as a previous employee, had earned the early retirement benefit, which is outlined in the waiver request. It would be the administrative recommendation to approve and authorize the request for waiver because the terms of the contract are fair and reasonable and not contrary to the public interest, such that a waiver should be granted. You would want to entertain a motion.
I will entertain a motion to that regard for Dr. Talcott's waiver request, please.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. Roll call vote, Mr. Lundberg.
Klumper. Yes. Odie. Yep. Telcott will abstain. Cullum.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you very much. All right, with that, under letter I, adoption of regular procedures for the 2019-2020 Board of Education meetings, there are 12 items under there. I would entertain a motion to approve that as presented, please.
So moved. Second.
There's been a first and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. There are two sets of meeting minutes there for your review from June 10th and June 24th of 2019. If there are no questions or concerns, I would entertain a motion to approve those as presented, please.
So moved. Second.
There's been a first and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Financial items, Mr. Lundberg?
Okay, the bills and claims were enclosed with your packet. Some bond payments in there. Page 1, we had $926,000 payment on the Robert Bennis Elementary General Obligation bonds, I had noted. On page 3, we had intermediate school general obligation bonds of $312,000, and the capital outlay certificates for the intermediate school interest payment of $61,300. Then on page 8, we also had another bond payment of $370,000 on the intermediate school capital outlay certificates. There's a refunding, an advance refunding, and a regular bond payment going on with that intermediate school, so there's a lot of payment back and forth. Some of that money is being paid out in escrow, and some of it's regular funds, so a lot of bond payments. Wage deduction account on page 9, $312,866. That just the general fund is making that payment for all of the early retirement payments that we will make in July, at the end of July. So a total of $3,134,000 of bills. I might just add this. This is why you need to carry forward some cash. You'll see in the cash flow statement here, we'll have $10 million at the end of June, but you just ate up $3 million in the first 15 days of July, so it goes fast. That's why you need to have those cash balances as we end. $3,134,000 of bills, no advance payments, $8,000 of pay vouchers, and $9,500 of food service bills.
Any questions for Mr. Lundberg on the bills and claims as presented? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve those as presented, please.
So move.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All of those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Financial report, Mr. Lundberg?
Okay, as we talked about the cash report for the month of June, we had $11,200,000, I'm reading down the third column from the left, $11,283,000 coming in the month, $3,873,000 of receipts, and $3,702,000 of expenditures. So we ended the month of June, the end of our fiscal year, with $11,455,000 of cash. $7.3 million was in the general fund, $2.3 million was in the capital outlay fund, $926,000 was in the special education fund, $53,000 in the pension fund, and $805,000 in the bond fund, and $54,000 in the enterprise fund. In the general fund, $7.3 million of cash. As you remember, we talked about our fund balance at the end of June, at June 30th, 2019, was $5.7 million. That's the accrual of all the other expenses. I have to pay the teachers in the summer and all those expenses that accrue. So the difference between the $7.3 million and the $5.7 million of actual fund balance. Fund balance would be your actual financial position at the end of that month. The cash balance is what I still have to pay for those expenses that were contract that was incurred over the previous fiscal year. They get paid for July and August is the majority of those. And there'll be some accounts payable too, electricity bills and all that. So that's the difference between those two numbers. The $3,873,000 of revenue for the receipts for the month of June is itemized. It's $1 million CD at First National Bank. The payroll and benefits summary for the month of June, $1.9 million of payroll, and the related benefits and tax withholdings. The actual financial statements, the first two pages are the revenue reports, and we've talked about this in the budget presentation. It's kind of reiterating the same things. General fund came in at 102% of the revenue budget. Capital outlay of the fund was 99.3% of the revenue. Nothing too much there. On the expenditure side of things, the general fund shows $26,984,000 of total expenditures through the month of June. Now we have to add in accounts payable of about $140,000 and classified salaries payable of another $75,000. So at the end of the fiscal year, we'll have $27.2 million of actual expenditures versus $27,343,000 of budgeted expenditures, 99.5% of budget expended. In the special education fund, we show expenditures right now of $5,874,000. We'll have $35,000 of accounts payable, $25,000 of classified contracts payable, classified salaries payable, for a total expenditures of $5,934,000 versus a budget of $5,937,000. It's cutting it a little close. Hopefully that pans out the way I said it would. or we might have to do a budget supplement on that because we cannot exceed the total aggregate of expenditures. Food service at the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, 2019, was in the black of just under 150,000 versus being in the black of about 100,000 at the same time last year. And lastly, the trust and agency report shows $125,000 of amounts that we hold for other clubs and organizations throughout the district. Any questions on that? A lot of stuff we're going over at our fiscal year end.
Any questions for Mr. Lundberg on the financial report tonight? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the financial report as presented, please.
So move.
There's been a first and a second. All of those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Lundberg. No, I don't see or I hadn't heard of any community input that would be happening tonight. That takes us to our general business section. First thing we have is administration reports, the Administrative Center, Superintendent Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just have a couple of items to update you on, and then want to speak a little bit to our upcoming bond campaign and some of those items in addition to land acquisition that will be approved here later in the meeting. But our summer reading program is off and kicking. It's every Wednesday at Brandon Elementary. We have had over 380 books checked out thus far. It certainly is a wonderful thing to see all of those kiddos in the library during the summertime and engaged. So if you have a chance to stop by, it is at 10:45 a.m. on Wednesdays, Brandon Elementary. Summer lunch program update. It also occurs at Brandon Elementary, runs 11 to 12:30 p.m. We're averaging about 420 participants, and it's important to note that the summer lunch program revenue that is created is utilized to eliminate the cost to our families that qualify for reduced meals. So if you qualify for reduced meals in the Brandon Valley School District, there is actually no fee as opposed to a reduced fee, and we utilize the revenue from that program to take care of our families on that front. Joint conference is held in Sioux Falls, August 8th and 9th. If you're interested in attending, please let us know. We'll get you registered. We will have new staff on site August 14th. We have 3 days of in-service prior to the new school year. I would note that on August 20th, we will have our all-staff welcome back and luncheon. Begins at 10:30 a.m., concludes with lunch, and then a large group photo. If you're able to join us, love to have you. And the 21st of August is our first day of school. It's important to note, bus passes are currently available for purchase. You can purchase those down at the bus barn or online at our web mall. The deadline to get those purchased is Wednesday, August 7th. Must meet that deadline in order to ride the school bus for the first 2 weeks of school. With that, our calendars can be found online, both our academic calendar and also our master activities calendar that Mr. Marceau works so hard on putting together, that has all of our district activities in one central location. So both of those calendars are available for those that are interested in planning. So here in just a bit, we're going to have a resolution that we hope is approved and will stimulate a bond election. So the 2019 Brandon Valley School District school bond issue, Vote Yes for Kids. It's a K-4 elementary building located on 41st Street and Sparta in Sioux Falls School District, or Sioux Falls City. I would note the general bond information. It's a $17 million bond. $16.25 million is for the construction costs of that elementary facility, and then $750,000 is for land acquisition as outlined in BV Vision 2040. When over the last few months and since our facility review committee, we've talked a lot about BV Vision 2040, and that's going to guide us in our decision making. So the land acquisition that we will be working on is specifically outlined in that vision that was created collaboratively by that committee. So 3 key items that I would note. It's district need. It's based on increasing student enrollment, current and future. Previously, Mr. Lundberg talked about our enrollment and our increasing enrollment and growth, so it's a need that the district has, is an elementary facility. In addition, no tax increase estimated, and that's with Robert Bennis Elementary coming off the rolls. And then I would also note that it is important for our public to know that previous boundary adjustments have been made so that we were able to effectively maximize our current facilities, because we didn't want to have to build a school a year earlier. We want to be as cognizant of our taxpayers as possible. So the basic timeline consists of the bond resolution occurs tonight. On August 12th, at our Board of Education meeting, we'll have a formal presentation with some visual images and some things like that. In early August, we will hold the bond committee meeting. That'll occur on August 13th. And then mid-August, we begin that campaign, and you can see we have some tentative dates for informational meetings and open houses the week of August 26th and September 3rd. In many different buildings across our district, from Valley Springs, Brandon Elementary, Fred Assam, the housing unit down there near that location on 41st and Sparta. We have those planned. So we'll formally advertise these here in the coming weeks, but wanted to give you guys an idea of kind of what the timeline looks like on that. And then Tuesday, September 10th is the election. Pending a successful election, fall of 19, winter of 20 construction planning, spring of 20 construction begins, and the school opens in the fall of 2021. BV Vision 2040, as I previously spoke to, just outlines what the Brandon Valley School District looks like in about 20 years when you have 7,300 students or so, or sections of 550 kids. You can see that our high school operates at its current site with a alternative school and also a CTE or STEM academy, an academy of some sort operating at our current Valley Springs Elementary land location. You can see our middle schools as they would be set to be fed by Brandon Valley Intermediate School South and North. And I'm just going to speak to these two items specifically. Our 5th and 6th grade system, our intermediate school, we currently have a site, and that would be fed by Brandon Elementary, Robert Bennis Elementary, and the East Side Elementary, which we do have land for over on the east side of Brandon. And then the Brandon Valley Intermediate School would be fed by Fred Assam Elementary, South Elementary, or Sparta Elementary, that's down on 41st Street in Sparta, and then also a West Side Elementary. So on the west side of our district, we've seen growth occurring and the potential for growth to occur. So that's our structure as we've developed it. So now I will show you land acquisition on this map. And so this is the Brandon Valley School District. The dark black line is the outline of the boundary. Brandon is here. You can see right there is red dot. That would be the West Side Elementary that we are purchasing or in the process of purchasing right there for a West Side Elementary from Golden Gateway LLC. The purchase price per acre was $37,500. There's 21 acres there. There is potential for a school city shared partnership park potential. We are investigating that with the city of Sioux Falls. And then the other land location is with the Kroll Family Partnership, and that is on the south side of our district right here. That would be just south of our current land on 41st Street in Sparta. So our current south location, 41st Street in Sparta, our elementary location, just to the south of that is where the land acquisition is occurring from the Kroll Family Partnership. That one was $45,000 per acre for approximately 20 acres. The red star, the west side, as I previously stated, that would be for a West Elementary as outlined in BV Vision 2040. And then the south side land acquisition would service as the South Intermediate School. So if you're thinking about the flow of our buildings in the future, South Side elementary students would go to this intermediate school. The Fred Assam elementary students would flow down here. Our West Side kiddos would go here, and then obviously RBE, BE, and the East Side would go to the intermediate school, or Brandon Valley Intermediate School North. So that would be the general flow of our kids from elementary to intermediate. So with that, I would certainly entertain any questions that you may have.
I think we're good.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then also an annual item that we report out is our bullying harassment data for the school year. So last school year, we actually saw a slight decrease in formal and informal investigations due to bullying harassment complaints. There were a total of 102 founded bullying reports within the Brandon Valley School District in 2018-19, and the previous year there was a total of 107 founded reports. So they were proven to be true. Considering that you have 4,300 students, it's certainly good information. And then the other item that I would note is that I look at it or evaluate is the effectiveness of actions taken by principals, and we continue to run in that near 90% range when we evaluate the effectiveness of our actions, whether it be counseling or some other type of disciplinary action regarding a bullying situation or harassment situation. So with that, that is all I have, and would certainly entertain additional questions on that front. But I would tell you that I certainly appreciate our building administration's work and effort regarding culture and climate and the schools that they lead. There's been a lot of efforts made, whether it's promoting respect or promoting kindness. They've done a very nice job of working to decrease bullying-like behavior. So thank you to our building administration. With that, I would entertain any questions you have.
Well, seem to be a pretty quiet group tonight. Does anybody have anything for Superintendent Larson? Thank you very much. So, and safe travels for the National School Nutrition Convention tomorrow. So, Mr. Lundberg, anything additional tonight?
A lot of people would say thank you, or the answer is no.
Okay, well, thank you for everything you do for us. High school, Mr. Schleckaway.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I wanted to say I was hoping Ellie Sachs would be here because I did modify that microphone before we started so it wouldn't work. So when I got up and spoke tonight, he wouldn't interrupt. But I do give you permission to interrupt because this report that I'm going to share with you, I will just say it's something that Dr. Talcott started years ago, and I think we have almost 20 years of data. So we do utilize this when we make decisions, look for trends and things like that. A couple quick hit items from the high school because we're hitting it running all the way. A parking update. I was able to give good news to some of our freshman parents and students today. I emailed out that we anticipate around 90 to 100 parking spots that we can utilize for freshmen. The reasoning for that is that our two-person and three-person carpool option did work. It did expand the capacity of our high school parking lot, along with the addition of the parking at the central office. So I got some positive emails back from freshman parents. Having 90 to 100 spots, I am hopeful that we can accommodate most requests. So I would anticipate that we will only have a few freshmen that we won't be able to utilize permits for. So that's good news for them. It's good news for the high school to expand our parking lot by coming up with a creative way.
Mark? Well, how much of an increase is that from last year for the freshmen?
Freshmen, we weren't able to allow any freshmen to park on site last year at all. I would say it's north of 40 spots on site that'll be able to be utilized by freshmen or students. And then we'll have an additional, how many at the central office? Approximately 90. So, and you know, we're a big school, and I can remember growing up in Pierre, and I had late arrival as a senior, and I had to walk to Annapolis to get into the building, and I accommodated that. The compromise here is we really listened to the senior leadership group this year and came up with a plan. So we have a senior open parking lot, so we don't need as many spots for that senior open parking because we do not have 100% capacity for seniors at any given period. We're confident that the plan will work, and hopefully we can model it moving forward. And we do know there'll be probably some hiccups along the way, but I've had positive feedback from the community, from parents and students. Second thing is, August 6th, we bring the seniors in for the senior retreat that afternoon, and we spend that day preparing them for Freshman Unity Day, which is August 13th. And I also communicated that with all freshmen, parents, and students today. So we typically have 90% of our freshman students show up to that event, so we're looking forward to that. The 2019 graduation data report. I don't want to bore you by reading everything. I'll hit some highlights on it. If you guys do have questions throughout the process of this, please pipe in. I may move a little fast on certain things. But the one thing I want to reiterate, the theme of this is success. And that's what's cool about this report. I've told Dr. Talcott over and over, this is one of my favorite reports that we get every year because it just shows data over time and whether we're moving in the right direction or not. But this class of 2019 was extremely successful. That success comes from everyone. A lot of times I think the high school staff, teachers, and administration get credit for the success, but this is a district-wide success. It includes all of the elementary teachers, administrators, intermediate school, and middle school. So I really think we need to celebrate the success here because it takes all of us to achieve it. The class of 2019, 243 graduates. We only had 4 mid-year graduates this year. That's kind of been between 4 and 8 in recent years. And then 6 students that are going to continue with their special education program at transition, Cal, at Teach Well Solutions. So they did not receive a diploma. 24.79 is the average number of credits attempted by students, with 24.39 credits passed. We reported last spring that you need 22 credits to graduate, so our students continue to exceed expectations, continue to take classes that push them, whether they're college level classes and so forth. 7.73 is the average number of math and science credits passed. We require 3 science and 3 math. As you can kind of go down and skip a couple, when we talk about the Opportunity Scholarship, students are required 4 math, 4 science, 4 English. So we have a number of our students that utilize that South Dakota Opportunity Scholarship. So you can see that 52 students attended college in-state. I do have some more information on that. 42 were public and 10 were private universities that utilize that Opportunity Scholarship. Tech schools do qualify for the Opportunity Scholarship too. So some of those students may have gone to tech schools, which is a trend that we're going to talk about a little bit further on. Dr. Larson, I'm kind of moving along, but I do want to go back and highlight the average grade point average of 3.19 for this graduating class. And the reason I want to do that is that 90 students graduated with honors. I don't know if we ever had that many. I mean, that's an amazing number of students, with 53 of them graduating with highest honors. So that's a testament to this senior class and all the hard work and energy that they put in, which leads us to the 23.79 average ACT score. And that's based on the highest individual ACT test. So if they take the test 3 times, and the last time they scored higher than any other time, then we take that score. If they scored the highest on the first test, that the ACT that they took, then they take that score. Simply amazing. 25 students had a 30 or higher. I know I couldn't get a 30 on that ACT probably, so that's amazing, amazing statistic. On the next page, this is always interesting. We had 309 students were part of this class at one point during high school, during their 4 years of high school. Okay, so take the 243 graduates, 217 spent all 4 years with us at BVHS. Okay, which then means we had 26 students that joined us after starting the freshman year. Pretty amazing statistic. Of the 66 students, because obviously we announced that 309 students were part of the class, 66 students maybe left us at different times. So we had 54 students that transferred out of state. That, or transferred, excuse me. The 24 in-state, 15 out-of-state is incorrect. I deleted that from mine, but that's a mistake that I made on that. We had 4 students drop out with no plans to continue at BVHS. What I can tell you about those 4 students, I know every one of their stories. It wasn't from lack of effort, it wasn't from lack of home visits, and it wasn't from, we tried everything we could. It's just they chose a different route in the end. So we always remember those that maybe don't make it because we strive for that 100%. And that's something we'll strive for again next year. And then we have 2 students rolling over to the 2019-20 school year. I anticipate both finishing first semester. So then we can count those as completers, which is a good thing too. Post-high school plans. 153 out of the 243 graduates plan to attend college the 2019-20 school year. So that's going to be the top 4 numbers there. So 86 are going to go in-state public, 21 are going to go in-state private, 36 are going to go out-of-state, and 10 out-of-state private. That number does not include the 40 students that are going to attend the technical schools. Okay? So if you include the 40 students in the post-secondary, that is almost 80% of our students, which is a phenomenal number. Okay? And then if you include the 8 military, that moves that number between 83 and 84%, which is a lot of school districts and a lot of high schools would love to have that number, 84% of their students going somewhere and not directly into the workforce. So that kind of summarizes up. Then we have some charts coming up that I just want to hit a couple things on it. Let me see here. This is the data we use to kind of look for trends. You know, what's happened in the previous 20 years. You know, are students still taking the same number of credits or attempting? Are they passing? What's the average grade point average? So you can see with this group, they're right in the thick of things. I even think they pushed the bar a little bit higher than what maybe we're used to. Next slide, Dr. Larson. This is the slide, this first one, number of non-completers. I think as we get bigger and bigger, and as Mr. Lundberg said, we have a small graduating class this year, but then we have pretty big graduating class. This is going to be something we really need to watch, number of non-completers, and we really need to hone in on that, because sometimes as you get bigger, it's a little more difficult to track. But when you look at 2019, and we have 12 students that are considered non-completers, 6 of those are SPED students that are in the transition program. What I will say about that, the last 6 years of data, everybody has to include their SPED population in their data, so it kind of levels the playing field for everybody when we compare schools. So then that leaves the 6 students that haven't either dropped out or may complete in the future. We're right on par with the average number of math. I will be curious to see the average number of science scores in the future years, simply because we're implementing Project Lead the Way next year. And what will principles of biomed, followed by medical interventions and things like that, what will that do to that number? Will that increase the science, math numbers? What I will say, of the students that signed up for principles of biomed for next year, almost all of them are in 2 science classes then, which is a pretty amazing statistic. And then the average ACT is right there where we've been. We're looking in the ACT, we're really diving into that information in the math and science area to see if we can't push that number up even more. So we're looking at subcategories there. Okay, if you could fast forward, Dr. Larson, for the sake of time. I really want to go to the last slide, the technical school. Yep. Okay, so this is an area I think of when you look through that data, this is an area that pops out as a trend. And will this continue in the future? If you look at previous years, so this is the students attending technical schools, and the percentage of students, look at 2017. We had roughly 6.11% of our students that attended a tech school. Then in 2018, we had 12.85 students, and then in 2019, we had almost 16.5% of our students that attended tech schools. That has been, that maybe surprises me a little bit, but that has been an area of growth that a lot of our students are seeing. They can go get that 2-year degree and jump into jobs after 2 years that pay well. It's something that's interest specific, whether it's welding or whether it's going into a medical field or something like that. And then there's just so many programs out there under the tech school world where hospitals have partnered because they have such a need. And so a lot of students can go that tech school route for little or no expense, come out with very little debt, and go into the workforce after the 2 years. So we'll have to watch that trend to see if that continues. And will that percentage continue to increase, or will at some point will that flatline out? And then we have to make decisions as a high school of what does that mean for our curriculum, expanding our CTE area or our our medical field classes that we can offer, which then plays into our 2040 vision of having a CTE or a STEM academy at Valley Springs site and things like that. So that's what some of the trends are kind of maybe showing me a little bit, and we'll continue to monitor. Any questions, I guess? It's a lot of information. Dr. Talcott, anything to add? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schleckaway. Mr. Frecking, anything tonight? High school? We'll get you moved to the high school. Okay. Just checking. We just did that for fun. No, I'm kidding. Middle school, Mr. Thorson, anything tonight? Okay. Mr. Skibstead? Mr. Babb? Any of the elementaries? Nope. Ms. Nelson, anything tonight? Mr. Henschel, anything tonight? Mr. Marcel? Okay. And unfortunately, we have no board policy. I know everybody's upset about that one. General business. So item number 1, I just read this and entertain a motion right away? Okay. So I would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution declaring necessity and expediency for issuance of general obligation school bonds, calling an election therefore, and hiring professionals in connection therewith.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. Does anybody have any questions on that at all? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. There are items number 1 through 18 under consent for general business. I would entertain a motion to approve those as presented, please.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All of those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Personnel, items 1 through 7. I would entertain a motion to approve those as presented, please.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All of those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. There's one item there for information only on a transfer. Looks like there are some building permits for your review. A couple thank you notes to the Board of Education. And with that, I would entertain any formal reports or board reports that anyone would like to give tonight. Alternative ed, we meet tomorrow. Teach well. I'm the only returning board member. So it'll be me and 2 other people, one from West Central, one from Lennox. So we'll get to meet the new board tomorrow and figure things out, but things are going well there. So if you ever have any questions about it, let me know. Otherwise, anyone else have a formal board report? No, we're awfully quiet tonight. Okay. One travel report there for you to review. And with that, that takes us to the end of our scheduled meeting. I would entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. And welcome, Dr. Talcott, to the Board of Education. You survived your first meeting.